Hello, I hope that you're doing well. It's a sketching session today, and I have quite a lot to talk about because there's been so much going on here recently, hence the lack of videos the last couple weeks. But I'm going to be sketching in my Royal Talens Art Creation sketchbook today, which is one of my firm sketching favourites, especially for more dry media. And I'm going to be using a Tombow ABT marker in the colour, I think it's opal, it's one of the lighter colours, but I put the number on screen for you. And I'm using that to start off the sketches, and then I'm going to be using a red ballpoint pen, and then finally some acrylic marker towards the end. But I'm going to be drawing some caracals today, and I love drawing animals. I love drawing cats of various sizes, and at the moment, recently, I've just needed some turn brain off sketching because it's been a whirlwind. The last month and a half has been very, very intense, and it's only just really starting to settle down now. So whenever I have had time to sketch, especially for filming, I've just wanted something very comforting for me, and drawing animals and cats is very comforting. So caracals for today's spread, but I wanted to push myself with the posing a little bit more for these. So I'm not entirely stuck within my comfort zone too much. I'm pushing my poses for them. And for that, I really like the combination of the marker with ballpoint pen, because the marker lets me put down the initial skeleton of the sketch. I can put down the shapes, the proportions, and just start to build up the blueprints of where I want to go with it. But it's light enough that I can still move things around a little bit. I could do this purely in ballpoint pen, but I do like using the marker first sometimes because it just adds another element in to the sketching process for me that is very, very enjoyable and mixes up my usual sketching routine when I'm just sketching in ballpoint pen or just in pencil. And I really like the combination of these two together, the red and the sort of pale beigey apricot colour. I really, really like. I have used black on top of this as well, and I do enjoy that quite a lot because it adds like a pop of colour behind. But I feel like the red and this go really well together for me, at least. The big thing to update you on first is that I got married recently, which has been the main whirlwind activity thing going on. We've had to do so much planning leading up to it, and then the actual wedding itself, which was so, so lovely. And then afterwards, there was a lot going on with my family and his family bonding because it involves a family from the UK and a family from the US. So my family and his family don't often get to meet up. So we took the opportunity for people to bond and spend a lot more time touching grass, basically, spending time in real life and just cherishing those moments for now. And it's starting to settle down. Finally, it's been very, very intense, but things are slowly starting to slow down. Slowly starting to slow down. That's not the best way to put it, but there we go. But right after everything started settling, we went to gencon, which we went for the whole 4 days. And that was a very intense experience. I have never been to a convention before, and neither had my husband, but we were with a friend who had been to a convention before, so we at least had a little bit of help in that regard. I also asked some of my friends that go to conventions frequently in London for advice, and they gave me some tips and tricks which helped me out immensely. And especially regarding things like the sensory overwhelm and the crowds, the noise, and everything. So they gave me a lot of advice that ended up being very, very helpful. Things like that there's usually a quiet room at the convention and making sure to find out where that is in advance. Going to the sides of the convention halls to get away from the crowds and sit down. and it can still be a little bit crowded out there just in terms of people sitting down and doing the same thing you are, but it's a lot less crowded and a little tiny bit more quiet. And knowing those things in advance helped out massively, but it doesn't prepare you for just the reality of it. Even if you know in advance that it will be loud, it will be noisy, it will be smelly, it will be all sorts of these things, experiencing it is a completely different, it was so much more than I imagined it would be in reality. But I'm so grateful to my friends for the advice that they gave me. And because this was my first time at a convention and it was essentially our geek moon or a nerd moon, we had a little budget in order to get some board games and card games, because that's primarily what Gen Con's for, is card games, board games, tabletop role-playing games and things like that. So we had a bit of a budget for that, and then I also had a budget for the artist alley, which I was really excited to be able to go to an artist alley for the first time. I got to see some of the artists I've been following for years that are some of my inspirations, and be able to support them in person by buying their books, their prints, their stickers, whatever it might be. The artist alley itself was really inspiring to me. It was a lot more creatively inspirational once I was starting to manage the energy requirements of being there and the high noise crowds, etc., that I keep mentioning. It was very inspiring and helped to refuel me creatively. So I'm very happy that I was finally able to go to an artist alley and visit one. I've been to things like crafters fairs and crafters markets and things before, but nothing on the scale of an artist alley at a convention, especially a convention as large as Gen Con is now. Yeah, it was just such a wonderful experience, and I'm so happy that I was able to go. I looked through so many different artists while I was there. It's a shame that I wasn't able to support more, but budgets and everything. And I was able to talk to a few of them. I talked to one about the anime free run because she had a poster, well, she had an art print of free run that she'd drawn, and I ended up picking that up and she signed it for me and everything, so that was really lovely. And I went to the artist Von Art and I got one of his limited edition prints as well. I actually beelined it to his booth on the first day, and then for the rest of the artist alley I left it till day 3, I think. It's a little bit of a blur now. Although we had a day 4 a pass for all 4 days, not a day 4 pass, a pass for all 4 days, I didn't end up going into the convention on the 4th day. Part of me wonders about whether we should have gone for the 4th day or not, but we can always go for a few different days in the future. We're probably only going to go for 1 full day and maybe a half day in future years, I think, and have a few years between each visit, not going every year, because it is a bit of a trip and it is very intense, and obviously it's a lot of money involved and everything like that. But I'm very happy we were able to have a little geek moon honeymoon thing that was all about our hobbies and interests and everything. And afterwards we go to a weekly board game meetup in the community, and people bring card games, board games, TTRPGs and things, and we all get to play them together. And it varies how many people go, but sometimes we can get around like 20 people, and you get to try out a bunch of different games because people will be bringing things that you don't have, and that can be really fun, especially after a convention with board games and card games, because people are bringing everything that they got in Gen Con and saying like, oh, I demoed this game and I got like this deluxe edition with this and this, and then we all get to play it together. It's amazing how much you can actually miss. You think that you filled your days with so many different things. You remember demoing loads of games, you saw loads of booths, talked to all sorts of people, and then when you end up talking to, say, like 4 or 5 other people who also went to Gen Con, each of them demoed different things from you, and they saw different booths, they picked up completely different games that you just didn't see at all, and it was an added extra element to the convention experience that was really fun, being able to share all of our different experiences and stories afterwards, and then also just share what we ended up buying with each other by playing the games and sharing them. And yeah, it's a lot of fun, and I'm really happy that we go to this board game meetup. It's a very fun environment for me. We ended up playing 2 of the games that I picked up in Gen Con this week. We played Good Puppers and Plantopia. So Plantopia is a card game all about growing plants, and it's got really, really cute art, and it's filled with puns. It's filled with so many puns, and the people I were playing with, or the people I was playing with, found it really, really funny. I also got Good Puppers as well, like I mentioned, and Good Puppers is also a card game, so both of these are small box. For those who may not be as familiar with board games, you can kind of split them into small box and big box, and it's very self-explanatory. I generally like collecting small box games because then I have more variety within a smaller shelf space. I do have one big box game at the moment, and that's Flamecraft, and it's a really cute gathering and crafting game where you're dragons and you go around to different shops and then you enchant, basically crafting different items. And that's a really fun game, but I didn't pick that up in Gen Con. I did find out that they had a booth or something in Gen Con where you could get a Gen Con exclusive shop card to use in the game, and I didn't know they were there. That was one of the things I missed and someone else at the meetup managed to get a hold of, but well, these things happen. You can't find everything, right? The Good Puppers game is all watercolor art. I'm not entirely certain if it's traditional watercolor or digital watercolor, but it's all watercolor art of different dogs and also a cat dressed up as a dog, a secret dog. And you have to gather dogs from the dog park and then use the dog's abilities to gather points, which in that game they're bones, and whoever has the most bones at the end of the game wins. So both of them were very Good Puppers and Plantopia were very simple yet not complicated, but you can have some strategy in playing them, and they were really, really fun at the board game meetup, and they're really small, so they're easy to just throw in my bag and bring with me. Another thing that's kept me busy behind the scenes and delayed things is that I've changed my editing software. I've been using the same editing program for 2 years now, and I use it for multiple platforms, and it's just gotten to the point where I'm not comfortable using it anymore. They've consistently been moving more and more free features to their pro only section, and it's a subscription service, and I wouldn't particularly feel comfortable getting a subscription service. I'm more into getting a one-time purchase for an editing software, so I ended up shopping around, testing out a bunch of different available software to me, and watching loads of videos, reading tutorials, reading recommendations, and that was a whole process. And then once I found something, I had to learn how to use it and everything. So that's been going on during this week as well. I'm pretty comfortable with what I've ended up picking, but we'll see how it ends up going. I don't have some features available to me, but I do have more in other areas available to me. So we'll see how this works out, both for on here and for short form content here and in other places as well. Although there's been a lot going on for a month and a half or something now, or nearly 2 months, I can't even remember anymore. It's been so much. I have been able to get some painting done and some drawing, some sketching. I did a painting of my friend's cat Akko as a present for her because she was my maid of honor at the wedding. and I did that on watercolor board, so I'll put it up on the screen for you so you can see it. It's watercolor on Crescent hot press watercolor board, and it was my first time using watercolor boards. It was an interesting experience. I've still got 2 more left, I think, so I can do a video talking about them and maybe painting or illustrating on it in a future video. But it was an interesting experience. It was cotton paper mounted on board essentially, so it's very thick, it doesn't buckle, but it was also my first experience using Crescent brand watercolor paper as well, and every watercolor paper acts slightly different. So I had a few things here and there that I had to adjust to and learn while painting. And that was really fun though. I used my main watercolor palette, my studio travel watercolor palette for that. I didn't use the Da Vinci sample dots. I'm going to be using those in the other boards though, probably. That's the rough plan that I have going at the moment. I've also got 2 other blocks of watercolor paper with me. I've got 2 illustrations currently on those to get through. So we're making progress here and there, but now that it's settling down, I feel like I can actually get to doing more painting and more illustrations. More of the, I don't want to say involved, but the longer processes when you're doing illustrations rather than sketching and things like that. But yeah, I don't regret anything that's been going on. It's been lovely the last few months. It's just life has various ups and downs, and you've just got to shift things around to make things work, especially when you have a spoony illness or disorder or anything under that umbrella. I've talked about it on the channel before, but I was diagnosed with ME when I was a teen. And I'm at the point now where I'm able to manage it day to day, but I do have to actively think about it, especially in situations where things get very intense or there is a lot of energy involved to the convention, or just the fact we've been so busy the last month and a half. So I do have a lot of experience moving various tasks around and allocating energy and things like that, but it does mean that you have to make some sacrifices and prioritize a lot of the time. But with all of that said, this is the finished page. Thank you so much for hanging out. I hope that you enjoyed whatever you were doing and that you had a good time sketching if you were sketching or doing any other form of art. And I will see you next time. Bye!